I will call to order the Torch Lake Township Special Board Meeting of August 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Will you join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and reviewing some of the housekeeping items. Board, when speaking, please move close to your microphone to ensure you are heard clearly for the YouTube streaming. And I ask the citizens who speak to adjust the height and stand close to their microphone. I will request all individuals speaking tonight to stay within the 4-minute time frame and would appreciate everyone keeping their points concise. And yes, Marcia, you'll get the 8 minutes because you got another 4. I would request that comments are made respectfully to the board and to each other. If you wish to comment, please fill out a form with your information and give it to the clerk at the back. First item, board, is approval of the agenda. We do not have a full board tonight, so there can
They're at the table there, Tom. Oh, you need a pen?
Yeah.
It's back there.
Do you have a
It's by
pen?
Randy.
Board, we don't have a full board tonight, so there will be no changes to the agenda. I will make the motion to accept the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, motion is moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, board. As a background, we have discussed this item a number of times over the last 7 months. At the last board meeting, the board went through the ordinance page by page for any comments, suggested changes, which were there, a couple that were made, and the board was satisfied with the changes, and they're incorporated in the pass that is there at the back table. Before starting, I want to address the amount of misinformation that is circulating in the township. These falsehoods had gotten so bad, some people were being led to believe that this building ordinance will be used to take away the rights of a farmer to farm their land. Today, the clerk received an email to be read at tonight's meeting. Since it is now a public document, I will read it. It's from Scott Felter, and he wrote, "I strongly disagree with the proposed ordinance. We own and operate a farm on Hyder Road. The right to farm. Do not allow this to be voted upon and change our property rights." What was change our property rights that got my attention? So I called Scott, and he indicated he was told that the township could take his right away to farm and that we would require him to paint his buildings. If you read this document, there is nothing that would allow the township to go to that extreme. Once I completed walking him through the definitions, the hearing and appeals process, Mr. Felker was comfortable with my explanation. He was going to review it, and he thanked me for the time and the explanations I made to him. Fortunately, many people have been calling me with questions regarding rumors, and I'm able to refocus their attention on what is actually said in the ordinance and not what people are misinterpreting what it says. Therefore, prior to public comment, I will ask your patience as I want to walk through the ordinance and explain the various aspects of this document. You can follow along with the ordinance handout that's at the back of the room. As expressed at the last meeting, there are 3 areas that are critical to the ordinance. The first is section 2, which is definitions of a dangerous building. If any of these items are not worded properly, in that a nuisance complaint could be filed, that would be important for this board to hear. The second area is section 6 and 7, which outlines the process that will be followed to ensure that the complaint meets the standards that are found in Section 2. Section 8 outlines the appeal process. We'll look at each of these steps individually. Section 2 are the definitions. Remember, these would be the guidelines for our third-party consultant to use during their inspection of the property. Many of these items must fail to meet either county or state regulations. So looking at each one individually, item number 1, if the exits do not meet the applicable ordinances of the county and state. Item number 2 has to meet the minimum requirements of housing law of Michigan or Antrim County construction code based on the damage to the structure. Number 3, and I agree that this one could be tightened up a little bit, as the example from the last meeting was a hanging gutter or a piece of siding could potentially fall under this. We'll work on the wording, or I'm open to suggestions when you get to the public comment, or we could drop it entirely. Number 4, this again would be a failure of the housing law of Michigan or Antrim County construction code. Number 5 is an observation that the building is at risk of collapsing, and the certified consultant would have to decide that. The unsafe determination in number 6 will be left up to the consultant to make that determination. For number 7, the health department or the county environmental health coordinator will determine there. Number 8, it's fairly clear description, but again, the determination will be by the certified consultant. So repeat, this is the criteria that the third-party certified consultant will be using, or the board in reviewing an initial complaint. The reason for that would be that if somebody came in with a nuisance, as opposed to what's defined in the 8 items, the board could stop that process. The next critical area is Section 6 and Section 7, which is the process that would be evaluated or would be followed in evaluating a complaint. And in reviewing this and preparing for tonight's meeting, there might be a way to combine 6 and 7 and put it in a little different order, but for now, we'll address each one separately. So Section 6 is building is determined to be a dangerous building by the township. So as you read through it, the idea here is that the board will first review the complaint and review it against the items in Section 2. If the board determines it's not relevant to the 8 items, which can pretty well be cleared by defining what is going to be looked at, the matter would be dismissed, as I explained earlier. Then the board has the responsibility, if in fact they proceed, the board will notify the property owner that they have 10 days to respond to the claim filed against the property. The board will not be inspecting the property as we are not the experts, except as I outlined, number 3 could have a couple of variables if it stays in there, and we might be able to address that separately. As part of Step A, Step B, the board shall engage an independent third-party certified inspector. To go through that, I want to make sure everybody understands there will be no trespassing on the part of the township or of any of its contractors. Any inspection requirement on the property will be addressed with the owner or, if necessary, with the court. During this 10-day period, the board will await the response from the owner. The property's owner's response must include a plan to address the issues identified and shall be sent to the supervisor of Torch Lake Township. Based on the response of the property owner related to the structure and the report, so there are 2 items, by the independent third party in 6B, the supervisor of the township shall hold a special meeting of the board open to the public for comment, with notification of the property owners as to the following. We'll go through each one just to make sure we understand what we're looking at. If the owner provides a remediation schedule, the board is to review and approve a reasonable timetable for completion. At that point, the matter stops at the point in which the completion of the remedial action is taken. Number two, if the owner does not respond or disagrees with the complaint, the township board, based on the findings of the independent third-party inspector, shall issue a formal notice that either A, or one, the building or structure may be a dangerous structure. Two, establish a required hearing to take place. Or three, they could dismiss the claim outright against the property owner. The notice shall be served to each owner or party in interest in the building or structure in whose name the property appears on the last local tax assessment records of the township. So a very clear, defined process that we're going to follow. So to repeat, if the board determines based on the evidence presented by the certified consultant that the building meets the definition of a dangerous building, a public hearing will be established, or if the matter can be handled by remediation, that plan and the board would work together to get it done. And therefore, we wouldn't have to hire a consultant. That public hearing will be chaired by a different qualified certified consultant who handles mediations, negotiations as well. It's not a resident. And the reason we would go with a second one, there'll be mediation and facilitation and negotiations, and therefore I want a separate independent person looking at it. At the public hearing, there will be considerable dialogue between the parties and potential three different outcomes as determined by the hearing officer. Those three items would be to either order the demolishing of the property, take steps to make it safe, or work towards properly maintaining the property. So again, there's opportunities to work through any issues that are raised up that meet the criteria and the definitions in section 2. The services of notification, you can read that. It's pretty simple. Things are in writing, certified mail. We do it appropriately. Jumping to section 7, that outlines the process of the hearing officer. You can read through that. I think it's pretty clear. There's timetables, there's notifications. It's a process that's going to take a little bit of time, but it's built in here to make sure there's no rush to a quick decision. Finally, the area of appeals is in section 8. I want you to look at section 8 as there is a correction in the second line. It's on page 3. Party aggrieved from the hearing officer's decision may appeal the decision to the zoning board of appeals within 30 days of the ZBA's decision. That's incorrect. It should be of the hearing officer's decision. At that hearing, the ZBA will conduct themselves as they would in any other ordinance review. They would make a determination. If either party was unhappy with that decision, it would then be allowed to go to circuit court and you would have a final court decision. So during this whole process, there are a number of steps of reviews, opportunities to work through issues. And, I feel that at this point, I don't see a whole lot of instances where this ordinance would be required. The reality is I'm not going around looking for them. And we're trying to keep it tight enough that we keep the nuisances and neighbor on neighbor conflicts out of getting in the way of the township's business. In hiring the consultants and the hearing officer as separate independent people is clearly an expense for the township, and people may be upset about that. However, if we are going in and we are making decisions on property, I want to make sure that we have enough independence and people that understand what we're looking at and trying to resolve and are willing to work through the process so that it doesn't reach that ultimate point of a circuit court. So I want to thank you for your patience and letting me walk through the ordinance, and hopefully it clears up some of the questions you may have. Moving to citizens' comments, I would ask that you adhere to the 4 minutes so everyone can speak. Again, if you have suggestions, this is a working session with the public. If you have suggestions, bring them up and we'll write them down. We'll keep track of them. And, you know, it's not a perfect document, but it's a document that we think puts us on a path that allows future boards, when they face this type of situation, to have a very thorough process that they are required to follow. So
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
point of clarification.
yes, sir.
In drafting this proposed ordinance, was there a specific complaint against a specific property that triggered this process?
That's a good question, Randy, and there was not an official complaint filed with the township. However, I probably received more than 15 phone calls over the course of my first 18 months in office about what's going on with the restaurant down the road.
Is that the Peterson building?
The Peterson building. So I talked to Todd and I said, hey, how do we find out if that building is really safe? And he says, you can't, because you don't have any ordinances to do that. So he started work on that and we put it together. There's a number of other townships that have ordinances such as this. Todd has worked on those before. But again, there were some good points raised in the discussion over the last 6 months, and I've tried to address those. One is there is not going to be any trespassing. It's going to be visual. They're going to have to look at it. If in fact the consultant has enough concern and we need to do an interior review, then we either get the permission of the building owner, and if they refuse, then our only course of action is to get an affidavit from the court for an inspection. And we'll have to prove to the court that in fact we have a need to have that internal inspection.
So on that basis of that process right there, it would be reasonable doubt that would cause a hearing if this is worded correctly. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the question would be if somebody files a complaint, that's going to come to the board. And the board's going to have to look at what the content of the complaint is. So
Will the property owner know who the complainant is?
yes, when the complaint comes to the board in here, it has the 10-day notification period. The board immediately contacts the property owner. And if you go back and look at section, let's see, I think it's section 6. Point A, the board will notify the property owner that they have 10 days to respond to the claim filed against the property.
But does that require disclosure of complaint?
I guess since it would be it's a public document to file that complaint, it's going to be open to FOIA.
But wouldn't it be easier just to say this person filed a complaint as opposed to?
At this particular point, we could just notify them of that complaint if they required notification of who that person is.
They asked for it.
Yep.
And that's, you're confident it's worded in there that way?
The board will notify that property owner that they have 10 days to respond to the claim filed against the property. The claim filed would be what was in that section 2 of the 8 points. They would have to specify what they are claiming as their concern.
Well, again,
That-
but you're not stating who the complainant is.
Right, I would not put that in the original document.
Okay.
Yep.
A follow-up, you talked about available FOIA. That's gonna stall the entire process if the person has to go through, the FOIA process. You could wind up being in violation of your schedule because of the time you took
Well,
to
I'll,
find out who the complainant is.
I'll tell you what,
It's a tradition in our law, as long as we've got a country, you get to face your accuser.
yep.
So what's wrong with the idea of just saying, if he asks, give him the name?
There are instances that this township has faced in which our attorney has indicated that, you don't necessarily, you have to file it if you have it, if you've written it down, but if you hear something, they still have to file the formal complaint. Once they do that, they'll have to sign it and they'll have to be notified.
Okay.
So
at that
that's
point-
there.
At that point, the complainant's name would be available.
Yep, because the complaint will be on record and it's got to be signed.
Maybe you should just change the language a little bit to clarify that.
All right.
Yeah, this is a
I'll
work
tell
in
you what.
progress.
I'll write down your suggestion.
Pardon?
Write down your suggestion and then hand it to me at the end instead of me trying to keep track of all the notes.
He's got a card in here too, so maybe he can put it through there. Or
That's
whatever.
fine. All right, well, let me get back to the people that want to speak.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, Kathy?
Okay, first of all, I'll apologize because these got all shuffled together. So I don't know whose was first or second or
Doesn't
whatever.
Doesn't
But
matter.
the one on top right now is David Barr.
David Barr, 2209 Northwest Torch Lake Drive. I think you're doing this, and to me, this should be a county. Shouldn't be, the township shouldn't be doing this. The county should be handling this. And the biggest thing I have in here is where you're talking about the ZBA.
Yep,
With all the years I've been on the ZBA, there is no way the ZBA has the knowledge to deal with anything like this. So I think taking it to the ZBA is being miscrewed as their ability. There's nobody on that ZBA that could handle this. So that's
All right.
my thoughts.
okay, thank you, Dave.
I relinquished my other through 2.5 minutes to
Marcia?
Marcia.
There you go, Marcia, you now have 10 minutes.
Essentially, the slow reader.
In fact, I'm not even going to try to keep track of time. All right? All right, who's next?
Okay, next I have Jim Meineke.
Boy, it's like an old ZBA reunion here.
That's because we know what's going on. Jim Meinke, 2147 Northwest Torch Lake Drive. I'm against the ordinance as it's written. You have a certified person doing the inspection, you have a certified person doing the hearing, but you don't have anybody certified doing the appeal, which the next step is going to court, which is almost always going to go to court then, because whoever loses is going to take it to court. Some of these people have some deep pockets and they won't mind going to court. So something needs to be made much better than the way it is written now, because it isn't going to work and it's going to cost us money.
Well, I'm happy to take a written suggestion from you. You can send it to Supervisor Cook at torchlaketownship.org.
Dangerous Dave at Torch Lake.
All right, Kathy, who's next?
Bill Peterson.
Bill Peterson, 12229 Yelta Road. I'm pretty sure everyone here knows how I personally feel about this ordinance and its creation. So I'm not going to go there tonight. I've told myself I'm going to respect the process. I'm going to respect the job. But I am going to talk to you about something called human element. Human element is a big part of this community. This board has said repeatedly about that they strive for things like transparency, community building, looking out for the neighborhood and their friends and their neighbors. Human element comes into play in this community in various ways. It comes in from volunteering. It comes in for helping the neighbor when they're on hard times. It comes into whether or not you're on a committee of the township or that you participate in the master plan. The human element also comes into play with that master plan, and the public has spoken numerous times in the revisions of the master plan that they value and appreciate the rural character that this township has. To me, if this continues toward adoption of this ordinance or any version of this ordinance, you're pitting neighbors against neighbors. You're pinning friends against the board. A complaint is filed. You know these people. They elected you. They entrusted their human element in the 5-member board here to serve them the best that they could. And that's for all members of the township, not just waterfront or flyover. I'm talking about also the working class people, which we don't have many left, that have kids that go to school here, or the farmers that are already struggling to make ends meet. I question the need for this. I can see so many problems as it goes down the road. Please don't let this turn into be, that was not our intent, or that looked good on paper at the time. You can't always foresee what the future will bring. But in my mind, when you consider the human element as it pertains to this process, there's not much good that can potentially come out of it. Because at this point, you're risking punishing a few for the benefit of who? Thank you.
Hey, Bill, I've got just one question. Ordinances are put in place because there's a need for them, because the township has to take control over that. I believe you filed a complaint against a neighbor on a nuisance, if I remember. It goes back to Deb Graber's days.
Yep.
And that pitted neighbor against neighbor, but the reason was there was a problem that you were really upset about.
Correct.
So that's why we put ordinances in place, to address those types of issues. I've tried to put in place here that we're not going to have people coming in and saying there's a gutter hanging or something's flapping. It's pretty serious stuff when you read through here, which is why I also mentioned that number 3 kind of is open-ended and could cause a problem. And you brought that point up the last time, and it was a very good point, which is why I'm saying, hey, maybe we just pull that thing out.
Or maybe we just pull the entire thing.
Well, that's your opinion,
It is.
and I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. All right, Kathy, next.
Okay, I have Alan. Do you want to go now or at the end or?
Alan Martell, 901 Wooden Gate, and I'm coming to you as citizen, Alan Martell, not board member. About 6 weeks ago, I had company from California, and we ate
Hang
out on the
on, Alan.
deck.
Tom,
What's the matter? What's the matter?
Alan's trying to talk.
Oh. Anyways, and we ate out on the deck, and nice evening like tonight, and we're carrying things in, and a few steps up into the living room through the patio door, Alan carrying a big tray of garnishes falls through the door, didn't throw through the glass, skinned both arms, was bleeding like a pig, and in the middle of the night, a spear went in my side, found out the next day that I had a cracked rib. Now, was my house dangerous? Does it cause harm? If you look at my house, there's 5 stairways on the outside to go in, and you take a look at who uses it, me. You can say, well, okay, based on his age and his arthritis in his feet and this and that and a couple glasses of wine, that house is dangerous. And so, I looked at this and I said, this is a slippery slope that we don't want to get into. I mean, we see a door out of place. We can, as Bill would say, the human element is in this thing as well, as to whether or not a building is safe. It may not look dilapidated, but it may not be safe for the people that are there. The other thing is I came here in 77, and many of the buildings that you might be talking about were the ones that were here in 77. They're older buildings. They've not been refurbished. They belong to the local people that were here at that time. The mom and pop cottages on Torch Lake, I don't know if there's any left, but there were a lot of them then and a few on Lake Michigan. So anyways, I'm saying no to this. We should not do this. Maybe go to the county or something like that. I did mention it to my nephew today, and he wanted to know if it included deer blinds, because we had a tree that fell on one of our deer blinds, and it doesn't look too healthy. So anyways, that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Sal. Always a sense of humor for us. All right, Kath?
Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry Hubble?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Again, I've got a lot to say here, and I've got about 3 minutes, so I think Billy also gave me.
Identify yourself and.
My name's Jerry Hubble, 2152 US 31 South.
Good. Good.
My family's been in Keewatin for about 170 years. Peterson, Coleman, Sutter, Russell, McLaughlin, and Draught families are all descendants of early settlers in the township too. Some of those families are here tonight. Our families were very good stewards of the land. It shows because of your purchase in the township of property. It obviously, you would not have done that otherwise. Most of the board here tonight that I see has been here 20 plus years. Bob, you've been here shorter, about 8 years I figured out, 2 or 3 years on the board. In other words, most of you are transplants. Now with this time that you've been here, you consider yourselves expert of our multi-generational properties. I don't think so. I served on the township board for the first time in 1980 to 84. I was a township board rep on the first planning commission. We adopted the first master plan and zoning ordinance. Then I served from 1992 to 2000. During that time, our board purchased the land that this building sits on today. We also acquired the nature preserve and the day park property in Torch Lake Village. I have had a lot of experience working for the residents of Torch Lake Township. Interesting, Bob, I have more time on the township board than you do living here. We are a township consisting of 1,143 registered voters. Milton Township has 2,119 registered voters, doesn't have this ordinance. Grand Traverse County has a peninsula township, and they have 5,668 registered voters. They have this ordinance. But it has some differences that our proposed one doesn't have. Remember, they are 5 times larger than us. After much research into this, and I've spent hours in this, I contacted the Antrim County Building Department. I asked them many questions, and they gave me a lot of answers. One of the main questions that I asked them was this: why doesn't the building department enforce Act 167? Their answer to me was this: why in the world would we try to enforce this and take all that liability on? They also gave an example of the nightmares that could happen if they did enforce this. And they also said that the state doesn't want to enforce it because of the liability also. I firmly believe that most, if not all, property owners in this township have adequate insurance policies for coverage and on damage and liability for their own protection of their buildings. It's common sense. We've all heard the saying, if it's not broken, why fix it? I feel that this is true with this proposed ordinance in our rural township. It's overkill with too much overreach and liability on the township's behalf. Various things that I see that need attention in the proposed ordinance if you decide to proceed. Section 6C should read, issues identified should be sent to the township board, not the supervisor. The next paragraph should read, the township board shall hold a special meeting, not the supervisor. In Section 4, Section 6B, and Section 7 is worded, who has expertise in housing matters, including but not limited to an engineer, architect, building contractor, or inspector. By wording it that way, why in the world would you use the ZBA that has absolutely no expertise and qualification in these matters when appeal is requested? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Plus, Bob, your wife is on the ZBA, which is a conflict of interest because you spearheaded this proposed ordinance. To do it the right way, you would need to set up a dangerous building board of appeals in a new section of this proposed ordinance. The makeup of that would be a building contractor, a registered architect or engineer, 2 members of the general public, and a registered building official. Again, this is usually used for much larger townships than smaller ones like ours. We are too small even to consider this ordinance for that reason. I fulfilled my duty to my country by serving 2 tours in Vietnam. When I got home, I began to enjoy the freedom that I earned. However, in the last 5 to 10 years, we started losing some of the freedoms that we always had at the national level. Now the township is starting to consider chipping away at our freedoms at the local level. It's truly heartbreaking for my children and grandchildren, and now a great-grandchild that will be living here. Remember, board, you work for us. I used to sit in those seats. I know what it's like. We are your employer. Please don't let anyone intimidate you. Please do your research like I did. I spent hours in this. Do your research. I think this is not good for the people of Torch Lake Township. I am not in favor of the proposed damaged building ordinance for all of the reasons I stated above. And either is my wife Tony, who is sitting in an audience with me, and I have a letter from her stating it. Thank you very much.
Jerry, can I have a copy of that? Your letter. Your letter.
Oh, you did, okay. I heard this.
I mean, it was excellent comments. I mean, that's the purpose of a public hearing. So I will keep this and we will consider it.
And then
Fully.
you'll give it to me, correct? I would like it also. You can have it first.
All right, I'll make a copy for you. All right. That was excellent. Thank you. All right, Kathy, next.
Okay, Marcia, you want to go? You want to wait? Okay.
Marcia, that is going to be a tough act to follow.
Well, since I have more minutes, I would like to share something before I start reading this.
Does it count on your minutes or not?
No, it doesn't count on my
Okay,
minutes.
just clarifying it.
My husband's family, he is the 3rd generation on the property on Yelta Road. Bill is the 4th generation. And our granddaughter, who just left for college, is in the 5th generation. I surely hope, and I won't look behind at Bill, but I surely hope that we will be able to maintain that property on Yelta Road. That he will be able to maintain that property on Yelta Road. And that Abby will be able to do with as she wishes in the future with that property. I remember as a child, my dad and I driving down Yelta Road. West Torch Lake Drive was not in existence. All the houses on Torch Lake Drive were not in existence. And I have a confession to make to Bill Russell, that we walked from the end of Yelta into the woods and picked mushrooms close to the residence of the Russells. I don't remember if we got any mushrooms or not, but anyway, I thought that it would be interesting for you to know there are many concerned citizens that have been here generation after generation. So that's all I have to say about that. So first of all, I do not feel that Torch Lake Township needs a dangerous building ordinance. We have a nuisance ordinance in place. The township is one where landowners care and maintain for their property. We have approximately 1,200 residents, a small rural township. It's interesting what you can learn off the internet. What do townships do? Well, one being tax collection. I would not vote for Torch Lake Township tax dollars being used to support this ordinance. Second, there are existing ordinances in place. Agencies and companies to assist, such as the building department, the health department, and homeowners insurance policies and companies. Why does Torch Lake Township board members wish to create this ordinance? Please advise. And I think that has been explained. Thank you. Third, were the Torch Lake Township board members, Torch Lake Planning Commission, Antrim County Planning Commission, ZBA, Beckon, and Rader involved in this ordinance? Did I miss scheduled meetings where this was presented and discussed to establish Torch Lake Township processes? With all respects to the ZBA chair committee members, I do not feel they have the expertise to deal with sections outlined in this ordinance. Does Torch Lake Township have jurisdiction to implement this ordinance? And the bigger question is, will you win or lose in the court of law? And I think that it was explained this has been going on for several months. Thank you. Fourth, most important of all residents should see that this ordinance will be very, very costly to the Torch Lake Township. Reaching out and adding experienced individuals, firms to support this, needless to say, when Torch Lake Township begins assuming demolition, repair, and maintenance costs. Fifth, I find in section B very interesting. The ordinance adds further requirements of the owner who has one or more defects of a dangerous building ordinance to be inclusive on maintenance of property such as lawns, trees, and shrubs. At a recent township meeting, board members were unaware of the number or locations of township or owned road ends. But it was noted that a list does exist somewhere within the township. Needless to say, these road ends should be maintained, such as mowing, taking care of the trees and shrub, and general maintenance, but is not currently being done by Torch Lake Township. Loss of property could result to the road ends that belong to Torch Lake Township. Let's make this issue a higher priority for Torch Lake Township board members, please. 6, I question section number 9. How does Resident Code 2015, section R105, addressing permits, seeking appropriate permit application apply here? Applications need to be signed by the owner or a designated agent of the owner. How will Torch Lake Township address this as they begin enforcement of repairs, maintenance, or demolition under implementation and enforcement of remedies? Do you really think the owner is going to sign a permit? 7, I visualize alienation, lack of transparency, trust, harassment, or discrimination within the township. How will this further affect relationships within Torch Lake Township, the board members, the employees, the committees, the county, and other governing agencies? 8, it's amazing that the old Peterson building on 31 has taken on some repairs. The new roof is in process and taking shape. The building has been spoofed up with a fresh new coat of paint. No further comments on that one. In summary, there are many issues relating to this proposed dangerous building ordinance and the dollar impact to Torch Lake Township. It's overwhelming to me. I hope you have listened and taken heed to my comments, concerns, and questions. Torch Lake Township board members need to reject this proposal ordinance. I would ask if there are any other written comments to the board that they please be read tonight. Thank you very much.
I didn't have any.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get a copy of that?
You have one. I gave you one.
Is this it?
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. So we'll keep that. As always, Marcia, very good. Next person.
Randy Bishop.
Randy Bishop, 11089 Wood Special Drive. To get to my point of clarification, I would recommend the board consider tabling this ordinance and dealing with the main reason, the basis for it. Deal with the restaurant building, see if it can be resolved with the owner. And if it's successful, then there's no need for the ordinance right now. Treasurer, taxpayer money with the attorney, conversations back and forth has been spent. Simply table it for now with the understanding that if you can't resolve the main problem of this process, you can always bring this back. And then you can implement it, and then there'll be a hearing, and there'll be a lawsuit, whatever can come from it. But don't subject the whole township over one particular property. That's my opinion. Number 2, I'm very concerned about the direction the township's heading because maybe perhaps without your knowledge, you're not aware of the Agenda 2030. Previously, it was called Agenda 21. In Rio de Janeiro in 1992, George H.W. Bush joined 180 countries at a World Health Organization United Nations meeting and agreed that the United States would become part of Agenda 21 because he thought it was a good idea. But then he did more research and he found out private property was an issue and kind of withdrew his support of it. It wasn't until Bill Clinton fully implemented and had us join that pact. Well, Agenda 21 came and gone, and now they've expanded it to Agenda 2030. If you don't know anything about it, I will get you a resource manual on it so you can study it. There's 2 words in there that every time I hear it and every time I see things happening, the hair on my neck goes up. Sustainability and futurability. Now, the septic code ordinance that was passed, I didn't realize you guys actually voted on it. Well, Milton Township has one and other people have one, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the problem. In May of this year, the Democrats control the House and the Senate have already introduced a statewide septic code. It's going to be implemented and administered through EGLE, which used to be the Department of Environmental Quality, Environmental Great Lakes Energy now. The problem is they don't like us. And when I say they, I'm referring to the folks in Agenda 2030's policy, their future ability, the sustainability of the planet. They don't like us living where we have septic tanks. If you have propane to heat your home and you've got a well and you've got a septic tank, they don't like you. And they don't want you living in rural areas. Now, when you look at the city grid of city water and city sewer of our township, most of us don't live in that situation. They want us to move into city environments, urban environments. That's why you see massive multiple high rises going up in Traverse City. Sustainability, small housing. Go to 8th Street, and I believe it's the street east of Garfield. I forget the name of it. Anyway, they have these tiny homes connected to city water and city sewer. That's their goal. You need this. This isn't conspiracy. A lot of people accused me of this 20 years ago when I started talking about this, and I'm talking about it on the radio. And Randy, you must have bought all the aluminum foil in northern Michigan because what you're talking about. You need to understand what Bill's talking about, the human element, what Marcia's talking about, and Jerry Hubble, and I'm assuming others. This is a situation that maybe perhaps you're not fully aware of, but because they very slowly trickle it in, you need to look at ICLEI. You need to look at sustainability. You need to look at this Agenda 2030. This ordinance kind of goes down that road too, because it deals with private property.
All right.
And the septic code, I am totally against it. And one last one thing, Mr. Chairman. We have dangerous roads in this township. I live on Wood Special Drive. It's a private road. I did not realize when I bought it in 2011 that we don't have a homeowners association for our private road. We don't have insurance liability. The other day, a lot of neighboring people in our area go for a stroll down our private little cul-de-sac. And a young mom was pushing 2 babies in her baby carriage. Down toward the end of the cul-de-sac, our asphalt has disintegrated. It's gone. The road has served its useful life. She, pushing the baby stroller, flipped it. I saw it happen because I was taking my garbage can out. I ran down there, picked up the stroller and the babies in it, stood it back up, and I thought she was going to have a heart attack. 25, probably 28 years old, freaking out. And the babies weren't hurt, but she was scared. I'll never come down this street ever again. And I'm thinking, okay, here comes, 1-800 call Sam. We're going to get sued, and we have no liability insurance. There's dangerous roads. There's other things that we need to fix in this township that are, I think, more important and potentially liable. Now, we have, I believe, 16, 18 homes on the street. We all pay north of $4,000 a year in property taxes, but we live on a dangerous road. I think that's maybe what the board should be considering focusing on, as opposed to the entire township being subject to this ordinance. Thank you.
All right, Randy.
And Mr. Stillings.
Stretch those bones.
I'm Tom Stillings, 570 South Golden Beach Drive.
So Tom, before you start, is this a 1-2 punch? Go ahead.
You know, start off with something my mother taught me. That government which governs least governs best. And, you know, we're on a path to becoming like downstate. And I really resent the direction this board is taking us in that respect. You and I had a little text session about the septic ordinance, and you were unable to tell me where you got the authority to even consider such an ordinance. You have no authority from the state, at least none that you could identify. You told me that, well, you could do it because the health department gave you permission. I think that was your exact word. Anyway, so I talked to people at the health department, and no, they didn't, because they don't have that authority. All they did was they said that what you proposed was within their septic code, and they liked it. But they have nothing to say about your ability to actually enact this ordinance. So until you can come up with some kind of enabling legislation that says you can do that, this ordinance has to be null and void.
I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, please, because, you know,
Yep.
that's how it works. You know, you have the
That's fine.
townships ordinance and all that stuff.
That's
And
fine.
if they haven't told you you can do it, you can't do it.
No problem.
The other problem I have is the ordinance, the way you got it set up, has everybody guilty until they can prove their innocence. You know, you're telling me that even if you can't prove that there's a E. coli or infestation in the bay outside of my property, that within 10 years, I have to spend money to have my septic system inspected, when it very well could have nothing wrong with it. Now, I can see if you sent somebody down in a boat testing the water, which I don't know you have the authority for that either, because the state owns the water and you're dealing with their asset. But if you did, and you said, hey, Stillings, you got a E. coli infection, we traced it to your property. Well, then, you know, you might have an issue, and then it might be time to say, hey, you better get your septic tank looked at. That's fine. And you can go to the health department, and they can force me to do that. We don't need this redundancy. Is it just that the township is looking for something to do so they can find people, get a couple extra bucks in the treasury? I mean, that's what it looks like, because somebody else has been put in charge of this issue by the legislature, signed by a governor, and that's the health department. You know, we don't need multi-levels of government doing the same thing. So it's a bad idea, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time and effort, and quite frankly, until you come up with some enabling legislation, it's not legal.
That's fine.
All right, and so that's it. And I'll give you a copy of my prior suggestion as well, if that's okay.
Perfect. No. You kidding me? If you didn't hammer me, I would feel lost. All right, any others?
Nope.
All right.
I thought Billy Russell had some in there.
I gave my minutes to Marcia, I don't think she used them all. Could I approach please the board?
Oh, wait.
Billy
now-
Russell had one in there too.
He gave his
That's
minutes
fine.
up.
I have just heard.
That's fine. Hey, it's a public meeting. I'm not worrying about it. Yes, ma'am.
Jerry, hold on.
For you,
Thank you.
Alan, please. Dan will read it.
Well, this has been on my list from you for over a year and a half, 2 years.
And now-
Give me the, I'll give it, no, Jason isn't here. You have 5, so I'll give it to Jason. Yeah,
Now,
I have been
Dan,
asking for this for a long time.
yes, ma'am.
okay,
It's not a,
by the board. You get a chance to speak. Susie Kelly, property is 724 South Golden Beach Drive. I have a comment on the old Ricardi's building. If you think for a minute that it can go forward without having every permit signed, sealed, and delivered, and examined to the hilt, because it's going to be a public building, you're nuts, I'm sorry. Everybody will be involved from the Antrim County on up, health department, everyone. It's not gonna open without these permits done correctly. It seems to me in the past many years, Torch Lake Township is absolutely against new businesses. The ice cream shop failed, I don't exactly know why. You gave Sonny, not you personally, you gave Sonny a hell of a rough ride when he was at his store and restaurant. I don't know, let's see, who else was there? Oh, way back at Riccardi's. They were doing well until the people on the beach got tired of his customers coming over by boat from across the lake. He had a dock, he owned a little section of beach, and they raised such hell that they put him out, pretty much. Anybody that tries to do anything in Torch Lake Township, you may as well figure you're screwed, because it's not gonna happen the way things are run today. And I think it's very, very sad. It breaks my heart. If somebody was dying of starvation, where in the hell are they gonna go to get a restaurant around here? Within 15 miles, 20 miles, other than Leanne's. You need to think about these things. There's a lot of people up here in the summertime. They like to go out and enjoy themselves at more than one place. And there is nothing. And Torch Lake Township is a sizable community, area-wise. You need to support businesses and not constantly trying to beat them down and take them apart. That's all I have to say. Just read the darn book, please. It might help everyone. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it
The
finally.
only response I would have is the number of businesses that we have today. Part of the problem that I hear is the fact that you're trying to make a living in 4 months and not 12. Your population decreases by 60% for those 8 months. That's a struggle for a business to try to make ends meet. Now, if they can make it in 4 months with the population explosion that we have and the visitors we get, then they would be putting that business model in place. Right now, the business models, there's nothing that restricts the business from coming in here in the commercial end of the area, M88 and that end, to put something in there. But they can't make the model work. And I can't do anything about that.
Be fine. Leanna's doing well. Riccardi's always did well here. Leanna's managing. Yeah, you have to treat your local people a little differently in the wintertime, but you know, they like to eat too.
Well, I understand that, but the model's got to work. And I don't think if the model worked,
And maybe that's
they
what
would
you
come.
should be spending your time on.
Well, I can't make people stay here all winter.
Yeah, Jerry leaves,
I mean,
everybody leaves.
I mean, there's an awful lot of people that decide, Randy, you want to stay here all winter going forward?
No comment.
All right. All right.
I can tell you
All right.
about business, that's for sure. We starved.
Let
from
me
this all
clarify,
winter.
Billy Russell, did you want to speak at all?
Yeah, he had a car. I
He
know.
gave his minutes away, is
Oh.
all I'm saying.
Did you give your minutes away?
Billy, pull your microphone down.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Well, I can talk louder. Anyway, the only thing I have about this ordinance, that first off, I don't like it, but there's nothing about insurance companies in it. Because they're gonna dictate how long it's gonna take to get their money before they can get their house fixed. That's something that needs to be in there. So,
Okay,
Okay,
that's a good point.
Mhm.
Hey, remember, we're not voting on this thing. So, you know, if there's something missing or if the board decides not to go forward, guys, this is why I've got a public hearing. Tom, I think you're last.
He just brought one up,
He
yes.
did, I saw him bring it up.
Tom Peterson, 12232 Yelta Road. I don't like this ordinance. I wouldn't vote for it. I wouldn't expect any member of this board to vote for it. The state does not have this. The county will not enforce this. The township will be on their own. All expenses will be on you. Some of this stuff in here, I don't know how you're gonna, who's gonna say what is a dangerous building by driving by. You know, and we do have insurance, homeowners that'll take care of if we have a storm, a fire, whatever. Some of this stuff is just ridiculous. I think you better really, really think about this. I would not recommend this for anybody. And there's a lot of good stuff that's been brought up that what I had as my thoughts of what we need, and this township doesn't need it. You don't need the extra burden. We can't even take care of what we got right now, so why add more? So, no, don't vote on it. Thank you.
All right. No other comments, questions, then anybody else want to speak at public comment that spoke earlier and want to add their 2 cents, or are we all set? All right, if we're all set, then I'll go board comment. Sharon, I'll start with you.
A lot of great comments. Thank you for everybody for coming. Comments were great. I took notes on what I could do there, and yes, it was posted in the newspaper, thankfully. Bob did get them in because Kathy was on vacation, so we did have a lot of public, and I was hoping that room would be packed, but it's not. But it's a good crowd anyway. So thank you for coming. I have been, like Jerry says, one of the older ones that's been in the area for a long time, and we did have business that survived only in the summertime and not the winter. And I could go on and on and on, but I won't. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Alan.
I have no comment. Thank you all for coming.
All right. Kathy.
My comments basically are that I'm sorry that the public that's here tonight feels like the township board is, I don't know, not in favor of new business. What else have we been accused of tonight? I just feel bad because I didn't know that these things were happening. What I think we're trying to do with this ordinance is not steal people's homes, not tell them to paint it yellow instead of brown, not any of those things. But you know that when you go by a building, and there are some buildings that you drive by and you say, oh my God, that looks like it's about ready to fall over. That's the kind of building I think we're talking about. And if your grandkids snuck out and were playing in that building and there was an accident of some sort, you'd feel terrible. We're not talking about people's homes. No, I think we're getting that too far carried away with what it is the board is trying to do. I think we're just simply trying to maybe control something you say we don't have any control over. But as a board, we're just trying to do something that's good for the community. Now, if the people of the community don't feel that way, then perhaps we will reconsider our opinions. But I don't think it's as serious as we are trying to make it. I'm done.
I guess my takeaway, a couple of things. One is I do appreciate the comments. That's why we have a meeting. As I've told a couple of people, the biggest disappointment on my part is the fact that this has been on the board agenda for 6 months. And the only person in this room who ever came to a meeting was Tom. Tom Peterson came, the first time it came up, and it was back when he had his winter coat on and his hat on, and he spoke against it. And some of the comments he made, we tried to address in this. But everybody else, the agendas are posted 4 days before a meeting. And then nobody shows up.
When the draft ordinance was put out, I was here.
And Bill,
So were other people.
Bill, it's my comment, not yours. My only point on this is that I've learned a lot tonight, which is excellent. I wish it wouldn't have gotten to this point and that this would have come up 2, 3, 4 months ago, and we might have taken a totally different track, and I wouldn't have spent a lot of time on this if people had looked to see what the board was working on. And it's my comment. It's nothing against you guys. You came out today. You expressed very strong opinions, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to take it very seriously. But if you had come earlier, I wouldn't have had to have this meeting because I think you've convinced me of a couple of things. So I appreciate your coming. I'm done with my comment. Again, thank you. And I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
8:06.
8:06? All right.
8:06.
Very good.
I answer your question.